Hey, TPK Paul here, and with the newest patch and the changes to Elites, so where they get 100% of their upgrade synergy from Mercenaries, 50% from Hero, and 50% from Marine. So essentially, like they're acting like mercenaries, normal mercenaries, and they're getting upgrades as they work as normal. I thought I'd make a quick tier list of the elites. It's something I wanted to do for a while, and I haven't produced a lot of content in a long time. Yada yada yada. But yeah, so I thought I'd make a tier list on how useful and how often you see the elites. So it's alphabetical order. So we'll start with the Banshee. So even with the changes whereby you can use its ability a lot quicker, the ability is pretty useless against decent players because it becomes immobile and very easy to snipe. So you think about Marauders with stim and things like that, you could take them out so easily. And for the price as well, you're better off for an air to ground elite. You're better off spending a little bit more and getting oracles, in my opinion. So this, I would probably put it in trash. I'm going to be harsh. Yeah, I think I'm going to go. I might even make one change. I'm going to allow myself one change at the end of this in case I disagree with myself. But that's the rule, one change. Otherwise, this video will probably go on for a long time. So, second one in here is Battle Cruiser. So, we all know, well, probably a lot of us know Bash. He uses battle cruisers very well in public games. They can be very scary. They're useful for taking out merc compounds and things like that. Having the ability to block things like snipe and other things like that is very, very useful. But they are very clunky, very slow to accelerate, and very expensive. So at 300 each, plus the 200 upgrade, that's a massive investment. And if you lose them, you're very, very behind. So they are good in good hands, like a lot of elites, but I would probably put them in meh, just because you don't see them very often. You don't see the pro players using them, and it's for a reason. They're very easy to be taken out, but in the right hands, they can be good. But there are definitely better choices out there. So corruptors can be. I'm going to put those in sometimes useful because they're not something that you would pick to farm. So it's not something at 4 minutes you would go and grab corruptors straight away. Although I have seen it being done in combination with other mercs like reapers and things like that. But they are sometimes useful. So for example, if you've got an air mass like Void or Muta and you're going up against Wraith, it can be enough to turn the tide if you corrupt them. To increase the damage output that you put out on them, to actually, get rid of a whole wraith mass that's meant to counter you. So, and people will cry when you have corruptors and muters, and they go in with a wraith mass and they say, "Oh, wraiths meant to counter muters." Well, they do, but not with corruptors because obviously it's an investment. They what are they 150 each? 150 each, or maybe 200, 150. So it's like a 300 investment plus the 200 for the pathogen glands. I believe that's the right upgrade. Yeah, the one that gives them a bigger splash radius of the corruption spell, which increases damage taken and slows the enemy. So yeah, they can sometimes be useful. And other scenarios would be if you're getting harassed on your high ground near your tower. Maybe they're camping you and trying to take out your mercenary compound. You can use it to spot vision, but also corrupt to slow them down and gain an advantage there. So can be useful. And again, same situation. You can fly them across to protect against things like drops. So again, any sort of elite that has in fact, I'm tempted to put it there because it would always be useful, but I'm not going to because it's not an elite you would pick to farm at 4 minutes. But yeah, any elite that has sort of multiple uses will tend to be sort of these top ones, whereas down here, the Banshees don't scale very well. They're not very good at anything apart from really being a short-range farmer. Disruptor, again, I think it's in the same sort of vein as the battle cruisers. I've seen very, very good players. Like you look at Big Chief, Crow, players like that have used these prime effectively over the years. But a lot of micro, they become very slow, almost static once firing their disruption orbs. So again, very fiddly. If you're a professional StarCraft 2 player and you want to use these, then fine. but I think in general I'm going to have to put them in. They can be annoying to go against when you've got a mass. But I can't really put them in trash. I can't really put them in meh because I use Banshees more than I use Disruptors, but that's because my micro is shit and I'm lazy. But I think just from how little they're picked, I'm going to have to put them in trash. Now, Hellbat / Hellions. Hellions used to be quite good. They scaled really well with damage, but that's since been nerfed. So really, they're not very useful at all. I don't see them being used very often. But Hellbats do have their uses, especially in public games. You'll see like mass warps. If like 2 teams have got warps, or even if 1 team's got warps and is fed, you can really defend your base from all-ins and things like that with Hellbats. They do sort of, they are useful for the cost. Again, I think they're 150 and then 200 for the upgrade, the sort of the blue flame upgrade. I can't remember what it's called, but so I would say they are. Again, you wouldn't really pick them at 4 minutes at the moment, but they are sometimes useful. Particularly towards the end games or in situational. In certain situations. Medevac. Now this is going straight to God tier. So, Grim Reaper was the one that showed us all how to do it. Big shout out, Grimmy. But it is God tier. It's got so many uses. It can heal air mass. It can, it gives you so much mobility on the map. So, you look at air in general. If someone has an air mercenary, if someone's got a big muta ball or void ball or whatever, they have so much mobility and map control compared to ground units. You can only sort of go so far out of your base before that air mass spots you and sort of pushes you back into the base or wipes out your army. So this gives you the upper hand. So it allows you to have that mobility and gain back that map control over the map, dropping units onto towers at sudden death to capture the towers to give you points. Doom dropping, so literally flying your medevacs into the back of your base, back of your enemy's base to take out their command center. Really, really good. Picking up heroes to avoid snipes, lashes, things like that. So many different uses. But yeah, really, really good. I can't think of any negative point with the medevac. It's absolutely God tier, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the only one that goes in God tier. Always useful, but God tier. Mothership. I'm gonna go trash. Never see it getting picked. There was a point years and years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, where you'd see mini motherships all over the map. You'd have one to cloak your army and one to actually farm, and it was very effective. But now they're just so easily countered. That's something else about the. I was going to say they're easily countered by like Goliath drops in medevacs. That's another thing, another reason why these are God tier. You go up against air or air elites, and you whack, full supply of Goliaths in medevacs and drop them on an air mass, and it's pretty much game over most of the time. So yeah, another reason why that's God tier. But yeah, motherships. I did see a really good use actually. If you're a creative player, you can think of some really good ways to use this. So Leviathan X, really good player in general, but really good void player as well, and does some crazy stuff. We were playing a game, and it was one of those weird public games that went on for probably longer than it should. And this guy had like 900 supply of 900 supply of warps. So we did a thing where he got motherships to cloak our base, and then I went in with my ghost, EMP'd the support towers and the CCs so that he had no way of scanning. And then when he put that 900 supply worth of warps in our base, obviously they couldn't scan to actually see the cloaked units, and they panicked, and it was just really good 200 IQ play by Leviathan X. So there are some really creative ways to use this, but in general, for the general player, they are pretty trash. I wouldn't waste your money on it. They're expensive. Are they 300? I should probably know this before making this list, but I'm just going off memory. I don't pick them very often, so yeah, trash in general. Now, Observer technically isn't an elite because it's bought from the bar, but I guess it is a unit that you purchase. So I would probably put this in sometimes useful, although it has just received a nerf whereby it's sort of undeployed visibility range has been reduced by 1. I don't think it will make too much difference. The scans have been reduced by 1 as well. But yeah, it's sometimes useful to pick these against, multiple ghosts, against DTs and things like that. If you haven't got very good micro, they can be more. They can cause you more problems because they tend to, if you're A moving, they tend to sort of fly ahead of your army, and so if someone scans or they can take it out and get minerals, and obviously it's expensive. I think they're 200 to buy, and I think it's 125 mineral bounty. So you've got to keep them on a separate control key, ideally, so that you can move them back. But they can sometimes be useful, definitely. Kind of meh, because they are a bit of a waste, but as I say, they are technically, if you look at the actual tier names, they are sometimes useful, so I'll leave it there. Oracles used to be my favourite. I actually made one of my first YouTube videos was a video all about oracles, but that was when they used to be able to blink. They can no longer blink, so I'm not going to put them in God tier. Otherwise, I think they used to be in God tier. Now they have a revelation instead, much like they do in the campaign and the 1v1 ladder. So yeah, it can reveal ghosts, cloaked units, and things like that. The 2 abilities that it has, the supremacy, can be really effective against heroes, so draining energy from, or preventing heroes from using their abilities, like ghosts using EMP. So actually a bunch of oracles can quickly take out a ghost if used correctly. So Lucky's well known for using this. I prefer the other one, the what is it, supremacy, and I can't remember the name, but maybe I'll edit it and put it in. I can't remember what it's called. It begins with I, does it? Anyway, that's the one I use. It's the one that gives you a bit more energy, so farms quicker. So I think they're always useful. They are fairly susceptible to things like ghosts, and they're not as good as they used to be, but they're a very, very good unit to buy at 4 minutes to get ahead in farm. 200 each, plus the 200 for the upgrade. I think very cost effective for what you get back out of them, as long as you can keep them alive, like any elite really. But again, if you're going to buy an air elite, you'd always just spend a bit more and get the oracle rather than the banshee, because they're just better. Raven, I'm not a big. I used to be long time ago, but I used to be a big Raven fan, a raving fan of ravens. But so some would probably argue that they're God tier. I would put them in always useful, because they have multiple uses. So they're very good at farming, like Seeker missiles. The turrets can be really good for blocking enemies, blocking off ghost pathing, and then killing the ghost. Putting down auto turrets to take out things like mercenary compounds. So many uses. And I've seen them. Genki is a really good example of someone. The NVY clan leader. So my clan leader, he uses them pretty much every game. He's very good at them. He would probably argue they're God tier, but for me personally, I'd put them just underneath. They're not as good as a medevac because, again, a medevac can drop and kill them. The PDD is really, really good as well. It can block projectiles like marauder shells and stalker lasers, whatever they're called. So yeah, very, very good. Always useful, but for me, not quite God tier. Reapers, again, always here. Those of you know me pretty much all the time. I'll pick either oracles or Reapers these days. I think they're very, very good, very cost effective for farming, very quick way to get farm. They're sort of agile. They're, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I haven't actually played any sort of pre-mades with the new patch. I anticipate that actually any of the elites won't scale very well into late game. It's not like you're going to have loads of HP and armor on them and they're going to live forever. I think they're all going to be fragile, but I think like something like a Hellbat might scale a tiny bit better than a Reaper, because they do, they're glass cannons. They do loads of damage. They kill stuff really fast, but again, they're very, very weak, but they do heal outside of battle. The bombs are really good for farming, but yeah, it's just a really good farming unit. Not god tier because it doesn't have really multiple applications. Saying that, it can take out things like heroes quite effectively. Can take out ghosts because of their slow ability on their attack with the upgrade, DTs and things like that. So like an EMP, and then using the Reapers to sort of slow and target fire. The DT can be really effective, but again, it hasn't got as many uses as the Medevac. Sentry. For me, if it was just me, I'd put it here. Sometimes useful because again, I'm lazy and my micro isn't that great. I think they're a bit fiddly to use. I think it's somewhere between here. I'm going to put it here just because there's much better players than me that use them effectively. They are kind of shut down by ghosts pretty hard when you EMP them. But I would say if you're looking at the tier names, they would always be useful if you bought them. I personally wouldn't use them, but they're very useful sort of late game. So I will buy them sometimes if there's Temple Marines or like warps and things like that, and you're trying to hold mid, you can literally block off the ramps with the sentries, which is really useful. You can block off your base if you're going to get all in. So it is very useful in those scenarios, which is why I would put it there. But I've also seen, as I say, much better players than I have use them at 4 minutes effectively to cut off other elites like Reapers and things like that, take them out. So if you're very good with them and good with your control, I think they would always be useful. So I'll leave it there. Tanks, I would put them there. I think they're always useful. I think personally, and I think, they're useful if you buy them at 4 minutes or something. 2 mentions in one video, but Leviathan X, something he taught me, is just to buy one tank at 4 minutes. So it doesn't cost you a lot. Is it 200? Don't buy the upgrade, just use it, and it sort of zones people out a little bit, and it also forces ghosts onto the field. So if people are spending 400 minerals on a ghost, they're not spending 400 minerals on other elites or getting their army up. So it forces people's hands to try and counter this because it is quite dominating in terms of map control. And then what you can do when the ghosts start appearing, as Leviathan does, is pull it just back to your base and keep it there for defense, keep it for much later in the game. At sudden death, they're very, very useful. They're good at holding mid. They're good at sort of pushing your enemy's base, so you can take out mercenary compounds if you sit them on the cliff. That's happened to me a lot of times. But I've done it many times as well. Just defending your base in general. If you sit them at the back and you've got 900 supply versus 900 supply, and they're sort of eating into each other, and you've got these tanks, particularly if your ally has them as well, you've got 4 tanks and they keep blasting into it, it will give you the upper hand. So I'd say they're somewhat effective at 4 minutes. They don't farm as quick as something like Raven, Oracle, or Reaper, but they can be effective at 4 minutes, and they certainly are effective later into the game. Now, Vikings, something I used to use. I used to use Vikings quite a lot. I used to think they were quite cool. They used to have something like, I don't know, was it 8 range or something like that? Was it 7.5 range on one of the upgrades? But it is going to go into trash. So, because really, if you're looking for an air counter and you don't mind a bit of micro, I would always take the Corruptors over the Vikings. In mass, they do quite a bit of damage. They can be countered by like Ravens, PDD drone. So they're not, I wouldn't say they're a direct counter to this. They do have their uses, but very rare. I can't put it in there because I would say this is probably the worst elite out of the lot. Maybe, yeah, these are all pretty bad. I'm going to put it there. But it's not even that great on the ground anymore. They're too fat. They take up space. They don't allow other units to pass through them. They're just clunky and, in my opinion, need a rework to become viable at all. They are kind of cheap, which is nice, but and they can be tanky with the armor upgrade. But the Neosteel chassis, is it? But yeah, they used to be pretty good, pretty useful, but now they're just trash. Let's have a look and see if we want to make any changes. So, do you know what? I think I'm quite happy with this. again, for me personally, if I was going to change it, I would change it to look like this. But as I say, I can't just make it on me. I'm trying to make it for the game in general. But then I guess there'll be people who will turn around and say, well, you know, I've seen Bash absolutely destroy you, TPK, with battle cruisers. So how can you, when you've had, always useful, sometimes useful, and even sometimes I've got Goliaths with medevac, and Bash just gets so far ahead in a public game because people can't handle his battle cruisers that I can't beat him. But I think I'm happy with that, so I'm going to stick with that. Yeah, but hopefully you've enjoyed watching it, and I'll see you in the arena, I guess.